Welcome back to the boat shop, everyone. Captain Joe here with Island Marine Charter's second generation professional boat builder, full-time fishing guide. And today we got a pretty cool little project boat in our shop. Now, if you guys are new to the channel, welcome. And if you're interested in gelcoat work, we got a whole bunch of videos related to it. Some of them are going to be high-end damage and dings that you need to repair back to an exact factory finish. But this one is a little different. This is pretty typical of a little skiff or just kind of a little runabout boat that I think everybody needs a little boat like this. Honestly, a 15, 16, 17 footer with a tiller steer, and you just got a wide open layout. But the gelcoat has got some wear and tear on it. There were a few places where there were some things stuck around the perimeter, and there's some chips and dings and some nastiness. So what we're gonna do is we are gonna be prepping the surface of this little boat this afternoon. I've got my Tyvek suit, a grinder, mask, and actually we're gonna be using some Scotch-Brite pads and kind of a common household product, Comet. It's got bleach in it. It actually works really, really good with a red, which is going to be the more aggressive Scotch-Brite type pad. So what I'm going to do is we're going to put on our Tyvek suit, mask, and gloves, pick up this little high-speed Bosch grinder that we use all the time, and we're going to do a little bit of surface prep on this boat, get it cleaned and ready for a fresh coat of gel coat so this young man can go fishing this summer. So it's going to be a good informative video with a lot of content and useful information that you can use on your own project boat. Okay, everybody, so what we've done, we've sanded this surface real nice and heavy. We're taking some Comet and we're using the red Scotch-Brite pads, sprinkling some Comet on there. And what we're doing is we are wetting the surface. Like these sides, I'm going to do the sides first. Now obviously you can use a water hose, but what we're doing is we are trying to thoroughly clean this surface, and the little corners especially, really hard to get in there with a grinder and prep that. Now obviously grease and grime and dirt and all that is not good, but wax is also a factor. And when gel coat is applied, a lot of times there's wax additive put into the gel coat to make it cure properly. But you gotta sand that off if you're gonna be re-gel coating this. Now, this boat is more of a utility skiff too. Obviously, if you had something that was a super high-end fishing boat with a molded interior, this would not apply to you. But if you've got a nice little utility skiff, which a lot of us do, and again, I think in a perfect world, every boater would own 3 boats. You'd have your big offshore boat, your inshore bay boat, and your shallow water skiff is the way to go. But what I'm doing is just using this Scotch-Brite pad with this Comet, and especially really focusing, come over here, please, and I'll show you guys right down in the corners. I'm using my fingertips to really push that Scotch-Brite pad down in there. What we're going to do is we're going to scrub this really good tonight, rinse it, and we can let it air dry. We'll put it out in the sun tomorrow and it'll be okay. So it's the next day. As y'all remember, last time we paused, we were scrubbing the boat with a Scotch-Brite pad and some Comet, and we let this thing dry overnight, and now it's looking pretty good. You can look at the surface and tell that it is quite dry. But occasionally when you're working on a boat like this and you get, say if you're trying to hurry it along, I know you guys see me all the time, sometimes you'll have some spots that's holding a little moisture or whatever. It is okay to use your heat gun to warm it up, and there were actually a couple of small spots on the boat that had that, so we already warmed that up. So we are to the next phase, and again, we got our little bottle here marked with acetone, and what we're going to be doing is using just a shop cloth, like a good old terry cloth towel, which they sell these again at all your big box stores. And anytime you're working with acetone in high volume, probably a good idea to wear some kind of a good heavy duty mask. Now this one is made by 3M. I believe one like this is about 200 bucks. They make ones that are more like this, that are kind of your standard issue. They both work just fine. But y'all don't think y'all have ever seen me use this big one. Actually, this one is great when we're grinding. It protects your whole face. So I'm gonna show you guys, we're gonna use a little bit of acetone and we're gonna do one more phase of prep. This thing, you wanna make sure it's good and seated, and you pull those down nice and tight. It also protects your eyes. So we're going to use a little dispenser here to wipe this down with some acetone. That's just one additional step we do in surface prep to make sure that the boat is ready to accept some fresh gel coat. So we're just doing this in every square inch of the boat, just like so. Just gonna go over it real methodically. Same deal back here. Especially on the edges here where it was tricky to sand. All right, now to release this, you pull that out, and that comes off of there. I can't overemphasize the importance when you're working with a lot of chemicals in an enclosed space. A good mask, really protect yourself, is super important. Also, now is a good time to ask you guys if y'all are enjoying the content and want to see us do more of this. If you haven't already subscribed to the channel, hit that like button and be sure to tell a friend. It helps us to be able to do more of this kind of stuff. So what I'm gonna do, y'all, I'm gonna go ahead and put this mask on, and I'm gonna go ahead and wipe down every square inch of the surface of this boat, and we're gonna get ready for the next step. So now we've moved kind of to the next phase. We're using some of the Pro Strand. This is made by Napa. It is it's a polyester-based filler that's got a little bit of fiberglass fibers in it. And we used it extensively when we were building our big 29-footer. And we're using a little bit of activator or catalyst for this. This is in paste form. And what we've got here is, we've got a few little imperfections. Maybe my cameraman will zoom in. We've got a little hole right there. We've also got a couple little small holes right here that are not in use. And now that we've got this thing all cleaned and wiped down, sometimes you'll find little things that need a little bit of TLC. And we're gonna go ahead and fix that. Now, one of the things you run into sometimes if you haven't done a whole lot of this before is how much material are we gonna need, like to fill some holes or whatever. And this stuff's expensive. It's about $100 a gallon for about anything you buy. I generally try to make a smaller batch. If we need to make more, you can always make more. If you make too much, you can't really put it back in the can once it's activated. And I find that usually like one line across the top of the putty, and usually I will scoop that up and turn it back on itself. Scoop it up, turn it back on itself. You want a nice blend. You want the swirls of color to all disappear, so it should be one homogeneous color. And bear in mind, again, putty is a lot like fiberglass in that the cooler the temperatures, the longer it takes for it to activate. And you can get away with putting a little more activator or catalyst in it when it's cool. Unlike today, it's probably in the mid to upper 60s. So it's about perfect actually. But when it's really hot in the shop, down here in the summertime, it can get well over 90 degrees. You can't put quite as much activator. But that's what it should look like. And what we're gonna do is just come over here and we're just gonna hit that a little bit. If you do it right, you really shouldn't have to sand much at all. Same goes for these. I want to make multiple passes in different directions. Sometimes it'll squeeze through on the bottom. You can see it kind of moving there a little bit. We just want a nice flush fill. Now, if you were doing like finer paint work, you would probably overfill it a little bit, or maybe even fill it twice and then come back and sand it. But you can see the gel coat is thick enough that it'll hide that. That'll go away. Okay, so we're all done, and we had just a little bit left on the blade. Now this may seem obvious, but a lot of times what we'll do is I will just keep a trash can handy, and we'll roll off some of that excess. And then what we're going to do is we'll use our little trick with our acetone. Now this may be pretty basic stuff. Obviously, if you've done a lot of fiberglass work, you may have your own technique, but I'm finding that a lot of you folks that are watching are attempting fiberglass and gel coat repair for the first time. And all this stuff is important. Obviously, you'll notice I've got rubber gloves on while we're doing this. But you're going to want to be sure to keep your blade clean. And then the same deal for your putty board. A lot of times we'll wipe that residue off so you don't have any transmission of materials when you're doing your next batch. So we did find a few more places. You can see there's a couple right here. There were actually a couple over there on the transom right in here that we made a little filling. And we had a few, let's see, right along in here, there was a little bit of repair work done. And you can see we just made one smooth pass. But if you do this right, if you do it smoothly, a lot of times you can minimize sanding. We're not putting any more on there than we have to, just enough to kind of fill those little imperfections. It's going to take about 15 minutes or so for this to cure, but that is part of your prep, and usually you'll find these little things while you're doing wipe down. Matter of fact, sometimes what I will do when we're going over the boat in detail, and so you can remember where you saw an imperfection, you may want to take a little roll of blue tape and just have it handy. And sometimes if you see something, you know, say you want to fix out a little area, we'll just put a little piece of blue tape by it. Or if you wanted to work up here, and usually this is while you're wiping down, because sometimes you find something and then you're like, where was that little pinhole that I saw earlier? But a little piece of blue tape kind of helps you know. And we usually set the blue tape off to the side so that the area you want to repair isn't blocked by the blue tape there. Just one of those little tips we've learned in the shop to kind of help speed things along. So, all right, a little more prep and we'll be ready. So I wanted to give you guys a little class on mixing gel coat. Now, if you look there, we've got some light gray, and then within this big jug here, we've got some dark gray, which is actually the same color as our 29 footer. And what I want to do is I want to tint this gray to a similar tone. Now, this was mixed at a ratio of 6:1. And what we're going to do here, for example, I'm going to just find, let's see, we've got a mark showing 3, which if you imagined doubling 3, that would be 6. So let's imagine, so let's just go, we'll go 3 parts to a half a part, if that makes sense to you guys. So this is a graduated mixing cup, and I don't have a space for a 6. We have a space for a 3. So if it's normally 6:1 on this mix, but we only got a 3 there, we would go a half instead of a full 1. And so what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna add some black till we're halfway between the 3 and 4 mark, and that might be even a little on the rich. I might have got a little carried away, but that's okay. Y'all, this is gonna be kind of a primer coat, if you will. So let's see how close we are. It's amazing how much that'll change the tone of a gel coat. You can see it really brought that light gray around, and it might even be just a smidge darker than our base, but that is okay. I may even blend that because this is a custom mix and I just wanted to get the colors close. But what I'll do a lot of times is we'll put some of the base color that we want to match on a board, and then we'll take a little bit of our mixed gel coat, do it side by side for reference. And I'll see if we can get that in the, over here, Logan, see if we can get that in the light. Yeah, you can see just that easy. We brought that light gray up to kind of like a medium gray. So that would be a very basic way of matching color, but a lot of times when we're trying to match, if we've got like some base white, you know, we will put down a little puddle, and then as we tint, our custom color. We'll kind of use that as a baseline, but I'm pretty happy with that. And of course, I already knew the sequence. There's a very slight variation there, but that's close enough for me to use that as a primer coat. And so what we're gonna do tonight, now, typically y'all, if we were like building a new boat and you had just raw fiberglass that had never been gel coated, usually we like to see a minimum of 2 coats and sometimes even 3 coats. But this boat has obviously been gel coated before, but we did come along and we sanded some of the imperfections off because we are not going to be putting a splatter finish, which is these little specks of black. We're not going to be putting that back. One reason they put that splatter finish on these boats is because it kind of hides imperfections. But what we did do is we came back and we sanded this and smoothed out some of those ripples. But generally 1 coat is going to cover over most of these surfaces where you got good coverage. But in areas where we've had to come back and do a little bit of filling, or where you can see that it's almost just pure raw glass, what we're going to do tonight is like a primer coat, if you will. So we're going to put down 1 coat of gel coat without wax, let it cure overnight, and we'll be ready for our finished coat tomorrow. So we're prepping for that right now. We've also, you can see where some of our putty here has firmed up, and let's see. A lot of times what we'll do with this putty, again, y'all have seen me use some of our older discs from like when we do previous sanding work. The disc still has some value, but it's not brand new. But it's perfect for this kind of stuff where you're just kind of knocking down some of the little imperfections. Some just regular old screen, like if you were rescreening your porch, makes an excellent filter. We mixed this gel coat, but this gel coat's been in a container for a bit, and it may have some little lumps and bumps in there. And gel coat is quite a bit thicker than paint. And if you try to run it through one of the fine paint strainers, a lot of times it will clog it up. It just doesn't work very well. So I found that for this kind of application, now if you're going through a spray gun, you may want to double strain it. But for something like this, this will catch the vast majority of the little imperfections in the paint, just like so. All right, I don't see much in there. It was relatively clean, so it looks pretty good. I would call that 3/4 of a quart, and generally we use around 10 cc's per quart or so. So I'm gonna go ahead and add, we're gonna go right at 10 cc's because the weather's pretty cool and I want this to cure pretty rapidly. So I'm gonna go ahead and add that catalyst and mix this very, very thoroughly. It is getting toward late evening. The temperature is starting to drop, and if you guys remember on some of our previous gel coat videos, generally gel coat needs somewhere between 1% and 2%, and sometimes you can even go a little more or a little less than that. But the temperature really affects the gel coat's cure rate. If your temperatures are down in the low 60s, you can go more toward that upper end of the spectrum, more like the 2%, which as a general rule of thumb, like in the summertime, 10% per quart, or 10 cc's per quart rather, is about the way to go. Matter of fact, I'm gonna add just a smidge more. That's probably more like 12 or 13 cc's to like 3/4 of a quart. And you're gonna wanna mix this super, super thoroughly. And again, I know if you guys have seen some of our previous gel coat videos, go over this stuff, but I'm assuming there may be some new viewers out there. And if you guys are new to the channel, welcome. And if you guys like what you're seeing and want to see more of it, feel free to hit that subscribe button, like, share, comment. We want to do more of this kind of stuff. And a matter of fact, I would love to hear from you guys as far as suggestions for content. It seems like the fiberglass repair and gel coat stuff's doing really good these days, and y'all are really enjoying that kind of content. So I will try to keep it coming. All right, so generally a minute or two of the mix time is going to be about right. And a lot of times I like to mix it in a disposable, matter of fact, cameraman can maybe pan around and show this little sleeve of disposable mixing cups. They call them popcorn cups. They're about 1 quart, and a lot of fiberglass supply warehouses carry these, and I find them very, very handy if you're working in the fiberglass and gel coat repair side of things. All right, what we're gonna do is get up in the boat and we're gonna apply a gel coat to some of these thin spots. Now again, if you guys are new to the channel, you may not have seen this trick, but we'll take some blue tape and it'll get a lot of times little loose fibers off of there, and it'll help improve the quality of your job. And again, guys, y'all should always be wearing a mask when you're doing this, but it is very hard for me to talk and video and be clear when I've got a mask on. So I've got plenty of airflow in the shop. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna load that roller nice and easy. And up here where we've got some areas where the gel coat, original gel coat, is really thin, and where we're gonna see a lot more wear and tear than average. Like your edges, for example, you're gonna see more wear and tear on these edges. And you can see obviously here the glass has been repaired, and one coat is just not gonna do the job. So I'm gonna go ahead and get, again, what I call a primer coat on here. Get that on before we get out of here for the night. That way tomorrow when I get here, this will all be sealed up. Same goes right here. You can see these glass fibers are exposed. That is a good area to get some extra gel coat on. Fill up some of those little pinholes, make it look right. This little boat's gonna look like a brand new machine. I kind of like that darker gray. Same color as our big 29. Again, if you're new to the channel and haven't seen the build videos of our big Buskins 29 over there, we got over 25 videos documenting the build of that big hybrid bay. Look how much better that looks. Now there's some pinholes right there. Maybe my cameraman can zoom in there. And a lot of times you can reload the roller, and gel coat is quite thick, pretty good at closing up pinholes and such. All right, tell you what, come on up in the boat if you will. There you go. You can see we've got an area down here that was patched and repaired. We put some of that short strand filler, and the same deal. That was just one layer of material there, and probably a good idea to go ahead and get a primer coated gel coat on there, and that's just going to give us much better coverage when we come in tomorrow. So what we've done is we have finished our primer coat. Last time you guys saw us, we were touching up some of the thinner spots in the floor and along the edges here, but as you can see, we kind of got carried away with the that first coat, that primer coat of gel coat, if you will, and we went ahead and pretty much covered every surface on the boat. Now there are a few little edges here right along the tape line. Also, since you've seen us last, we have finished taping and masking everything off, which is important. Little details like around the cleats and whatnot, we went ahead and taped around those. Now, if this were a more detailed job or you wanted to go to the extra effort, you could actually remove all the hardware. But for a little work skiff, fishing skiff like this is going to be a really, really nice job and not really necessary. One other thing we have done is we've taken one of our little, like our 3M blocks and some 60 or 80 grit sandpaper, and we've gone over the surface here, and you can see we've kind of just scuffed it a little bit, and we've knocked any little burrs or bits off of there. Obviously, while we were doing that, wearing a mask, wearing eye protection, wearing gloves, respirator, all your PPE and safety stuff. But now we have moved on. We're getting ready to put our second coat of gel coat on. Got a nice little weather window here where the temperatures are doable. It's a little on the low end, close to 60 degrees, which that's a little on the cool side, so we're going hot on the catalyst. But you guys come on over. I will show you what we're gonna do. Again, you would want to be wearing a good respirator or mask the whole time, but we just used some screen cloth to pour our gel coat through, and we've got our gel coat sitting there, and we went ahead and poured up 3 quarts, which I think will be enough for this. It's good to go ahead and plan your work and have everything staged and ready. Now what we've got is some of our sanding aid. Some people refer to that as modifier C or wax solution. And we are gonna go, we've got one little tiny mixing cups, and we're gonna put about 1.5 ounces or so in there. Let's see how close we are. That's right on 1.5 ounces. Now I have found that going a little heavy on the wax is better than going light. Again, same deal, about 1.5 ounces, which that might be more than a lot of people would put, but I have found that we get good results. Obviously you could put a little bit less in there, but I haven't seen any negative. Same deal. We're gonna go ahead and mix that thoroughly. Now, this is your wax solution. This is not the same as your MEKP, your catalyst. You only add this as it's needed. You do not want to add it and then have it sitting for any amount of time. If you got access to one, folks, that's just your standard little paddle mixer like you might find at Lowe's or Home Depot. And that is going to be a better tool for the job than just a wood paddle stick. If you have one, I would probably recommend mixing at least 2 or 3 minutes, maybe longer. I generally tell people you want to mix it till you know that it's mixed well, and then mix it a little longer. Now you can see that one is quite blended. On this one you can actually see the wax had floated to the surface. We're going to jump right over. Same deal, we are going to incorporate that wax very thoroughly. I'm going to reverse the direction of mix. So we're getting ready to add some catalyst to this. Also, catalyst is the same as hardener or MEKP. And we've got this cool little dispenser. We have cleaned our mixing blade there. And what we've got here, this is measured off in cc's. There's 5, 10, 15, 20. Now, temperature is on the lower end of the spectrum for what we would typically like to see, but it's workable, and we've done this a bunch. Just bear in mind that really about 70 degrees is pretty optimal. And at 70 degrees, you typically would add 11 cc's per quart of gel coat. Is a pretty good ballpark. It could be anywhere from 11, 12, 13 cc's thereabout, but because it's a little bit colder than it normally is, I'm going to be going a little bit hotter than that. Closer to probably 2% is what we're shooting for. So we're going to be going somewhere in that 15 or so cc's, which again, that is going to be pretty hot, but I usually can work pretty fast, and I've done this a bunch. But remember, once you activate it, you do not have very, very long. I would generally mix it for 3 minutes or so, and then you better be getting to work. You've probably got about 20 minutes or so tops, give or take. I know there's always going to be somebody out there that's going to say something about what I'm saying. These are just general guidelines, folks. Of course, I always tell people, I'm just showing y'all what we're doing. If you're not comfortable with what we're doing, feel free to do your own research or make an adaptation if need be. We're going to mix this very thoroughly, and then we're going to be transferring it to a pan. That's called a 2-pot method or 2-container method. That way you can be sure you don't have any unmixed or uncatalyzed material make its way into your pan. And what I'm doing is just using a 3-inch wide bristle brush or a chip brush to get all the corners first. Sometimes it is tricky to get in the corners with the roller and get it in there good. So I have found that a lot of times we'll go ahead and hit the corners. You do have to move pretty quick with this stuff. Even in cool weather, you don't have an awful lot of time, and we're hitting all these corners first. Right down in those corners, using the brush to fill up some of those pinholes. Occasionally you will have a hair get loose, and if that happens, just use your brush and grab it out of there. You do have to move with some little bit of speed, or else you'll find this stuff catching up with you. Okay, so now we have worked back a ways, and we're going to take our little roller where we use our tape trick to get the excess fibers and hair off of there. We're going to move right back up to the front. I'm going to load the roller nice and even. And when you are using masses of resin, you want to keep turning that material at the base, or else you can have what's called boil over. It can build heat within itself and kick off. So here we go. Here we go with the roller. And again, I have already brushed all the corners. And again, this is just a little utility skiff. So we're just trying to get a good workboat type finish going in here is what we're dealing with. But I'm going over everything nice and uniform. Just like so. Load the roller up once again, and here we go with the sides. You can see now at this point we're getting some really pretty coverage there. It's starting to look really nice. And I'm using landmarks here when we're rolling. Like I'm going to kind of roll right to this little petition here, and then come back and kind of double check everything. We're making progress at this point. We've finished gel coating the interior floor. I don't know if my cameraman can kind of pan over there and show how good that looks. Walk on around, give an overview of things. We're doing more of the same though. We're doing this in stages where we're did the floor first, which typically if you're doing a boat like this, it would make sense to do the floor because a lot of times we are reaching back over the gunnels, and if you do the sides or the gunnels first, then it can make accessing everything really tricky. But this little boat does have a pretty sharp corner up here, right up in that tight spot, and if you try to do that with a roller, it's going to challenge you for sure. Tyvek suit is always a good idea, and again, PPE, protective gear. I'm just wearing a paper mask. You should wear a respirator. We're just doing this for a few minutes so you guys can see and hear. All right. Sometimes even a ladder is a handy thing. Sometimes you can elevate yourself a little bit. It'll give you a little better angle. Angle of the dangle there. Okay. I am pretty happy with that. Same deal though. We've got some hairs coming out of there. Now typically we don't lose a bunch, we'll lose a couple, but if you see them, now is the time to get them. And yes, a better, more expensive brush would lose less hairs, but it gets really pricey. We generally throw these inexpensive brushes away after every batch, and so using these are $2 or $3 a piece versus like your higher end brushes are going to be $15 or $20 a piece, and it's just not feasible for a job like this. Now if you had a much higher end job, it would probably make sense to invest in a higher quality brush. This stuff, once it's catalyzed, you do not have a super long time to get your material out there, especially when you're painting gel coat that's the same color as your base. It can be tricky to see where you've been. So what we're doing is you'll see me sometimes move like this and we're looking for the shine. The old gel coat's kind of got a flat look. The new gel coat is shiny. So that's what we're looking for. We ended up putting 2 full coats on this little boat. As a basic rundown, we cleaned the interior real thoroughly with some Comet or Ajax cleaner on a Scotch-Brite pad. Is a real good way to clean this kind of surface. Then we wiped it all down with some acetone. We taped all the rub rails and the cleats off. Now, if you wanted to go the extra mile on something like this, you could remove all that hardware, but that would add a bit of time. But if we do a little walk around, the gel coat is still actually tacking off. And what's interesting is gel coat with wax in it kind of gets a flat, dull look. For folks that are new to working with gel coat, it does not come out like shiny paint, or it's not high gloss like you see on a boat that's pulled out of a mold. Gel coat in its natural state almost has an orange peel texture and a flatness to it. So we ended up using about 3 quarts, by the way, to do the interior of this little boat. If you guys are enjoying the content, we appreciate y'all so much. Remember to subscribe, like, comment, share. We want to do more of this kind of stuff and we need y'all's support. The channel's been growing like crazy. It's all because of you guys and we appreciate it so much. It's Captain Joe here with Island Marine Charters, Fish Bump TV here on YouTube. And as always, we will catch you guys next time out.